I'm doing okay. How are you?
Doing okay. Just scrambling to find something with a camera that works.
Right. Yeah, I guess Substack you can use. You can't add a guest if you're live streaming from the desktop from the browser, so I guess that feature's not available yet.
Wow, it's crazy.
Scrambling to Zoom.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah. Well, it's nice to meet you finally.
you too,
Appreciate you
man.
taking the time to meet me here.
Absolutely.
So you run the Comics Crowd Substack
Yep.
and you make comics as well. I've been following your Substack on and off now. I think you do really good work. I don't think there's anybody really covering the crowdfunding comics realm as closely and consistently as you are. So good job.
Thanks. And that's really why I started it because there was a void there. I saw that last year, and for the 12, 13 years before that, I'd been using Kickstarter, that there just wasn't a spotlight on worthy comics on Kickstarter, and that's why I started this effort last August.
Nice. Well, yeah, it's definitely something that was needed. So let's just talk about because I've never crowdfunded a comic. Haven't bought many comics on Kickstarter or Indiegogo. So let's just talk in general for people who might not really know about this whole scene. Where did that start? This crowdfunding to make comics, to fund like the making of comics. How did that start?
Um, well, as far as I know, the first time I heard of Kickstarter was probably in 2009. My partner Amanda Rachel, she's the artist that works on our Vicious Circus comics. We were just at the front end of starting that book, and we were in a excuse me, an online like amateur comic creator competition called Small Press Idol back in 2009, 2010. Which resulted in us making our first comic. And I remember hearing from some of the other people in that contest that when they were done with the contest, they were going to fund the remaining parts of their comic through Kickstarter. And at that time, I don't know exactly when Kickstarter started up. It was around 2008, 2009. So it was very fresh, very brand new. And after we were done with that competition and had printed our first 12-page installment of the comic, I investigated Kickstarter, and it was just super easy to set up a campaign page. We already had a little bit of a built-in audience from the Small Press Idol competition, and I mean, you're talking like maybe 2 hours setup, even way back then for the Kickstarter page, and it was simple. And when people realized how simple it was, and that there were pretty shallow waters in terms of how many other competing campaigns there were at that time, there just wasn't much. Um, and it really just took off from there. That was the first time I heard of it, and I think probably the majority of the people in that campaign and that contest used Kickstarter around that time, and it worked really well for us. I mean, we were making hundreds of dollars, not thousands of dollars at that time, but it was enough to make a small print run that we could take to cons.
Hmm. So Kickstarter, crowdfunding, all that stuff now has become, as per your one of your latest articles on Substack, has become a mainstream thing. I was looking at Mark Miller's latest project, which is a crowdfunder for a comic, which is going to be made into a movie almost simultaneously. So he's like raising
Right.
funds for that. We're talking about a guy who has like a Netflix deal
Yeah.
and has had his comics has had movie deals and all that. So this is like a big deal now. So how would you uh, describe how it evolved from this, people at cons, pretty, funding small print runs to this big, huge kind of mainstream thing now? Like, how did it blow up that way?
I think the bigger names, not just in publishing, but in creating, including people like Scott Snyder, Keanu Reeves at one point with Berserker, they saw a way to build audience, which is what we primarily want to use it for, is to build audience as much as to raise funds to print and publish. It's about building audience, and we have built people, we have built an audience of people who help us fund comics even today from 10, 12 years ago. And these bigger companies with these huge email lists, giant social media presences, they see that they can access people who are comics fans that they weren't able to access before through Kickstarter. I think that's the biggest part of it, and that's what I've read in interviews with some of these folks, like at Boom, where they did Berserker with Keanu Reeves, and some of the other companies that are heavy users like Dynamite, even Zenoscope. That it's not just the money; it's building new readers, new collectors for their lines, and it's been very effective. And I'm sure that's what Miller's doing, is
Mhm.
accessing that new audience with, I mean, he's making this with John Romita Jr., who's an absolute legend and on the Marvel side of things, and drew Amazing Spider-Man, Uncanny X-Men, and just about anything else you can think of over there. Um, but yeah, I don't think they need Kickstarter, but it boosts their fan base for a particular project, especially.
Mhm. So in your article, you were kind of uh, trying to balance the pros and cons of that. Um, I guess is it so there's definitely the con, which is these people kind of are big fish, like kind of hoovering up a potential audience. Um, do I still got you, Kevin? Oh, looks like we had a bit of a disruption. Oh, looks
You
like we got
froze up
this.
there.
Yep. Who knows? The internet goblins are about. Um, I did look at the files and it looks like our recording was not interrupted, so we'll just hope for the best.
Okay.
Yeah, so my question was like these guys are like the pros and cons for the indie creators, these guys you could argue that they're pulling attention away from the little guys, but on the
Yeah.
other end, they're bringing attention to the platform that you're on. So where do you stand with that? Do you think it's overall a net good that these big guys are coming around?
I do. I looked a little deeper into it last year, and typically there are about two or three of these campaigns going on at a time. At least that was my impression from what I looked at when I did that deep dive at the end of 24. And so they're not taking over the platform. You're not seeing, 10, 20 of these at a time. And they're very reliable in fulfillment. They get the books where they're supposed to go, when they're supposed to go, and they look really nice. If I'm a big G.I. Joe nerd, and I backed the Skybound campaign last year that was, I think, still stands as the biggest comic campaign ever. And they delivered early. That product is amazing looking. It's a beautiful set of books. And I mean, I know I'm not the only one that was super happy with it. I saw the social media posts of people that got it. And I think they boost the reputation of comics on Kickstarter, not just by bringing people who have never used Kickstarter before to Kickstarter to pledge their projects, but also by adding a little prestige to it.
Yeah.
And reliability and clout. I think I found one campaign out of six or seven that I was looking at back then that was a little late, and I mean a little late. So the reliability, the esteem that these creators and publishers already held in bring to the platform, and they bring new faces. And when people come to Kickstarter and see that they're going to get what they paid for, what they contributed to, they come back. And it's the opposite of some other situations that we're seeing where heavy users don't fulfill on time or not at all or for years. The big publishers, big names are doing what they say and they're doing it right. And that's been my experience, and that's backed up by actual looking at the data and following the updates and when fulfillment was done, and also pledging some of them myself. And I
Mhm.
never, I mean, I got the heavy metal issue that they funded a few months ago in last week. Looks great. I
Mhm.
got the PDF from Metal Hurlant that was funded at exactly the same time, strangely. I got that weeks ago. So they're really doing what they say they're going to do, and that only helps what we're doing. You know, when they're sitting up there beside relative unknowns like myself and on the creative side, to me it feels better, and I feel like it enhances trust.
Yeah. Legitimizes the platform.
Yeah,
Mhm. Um, I guess a case could be made that the crowdfunding space um, is is an answer to those complaints that we need the newsstand back, um, in a way, because it's putting it in front of people, because there's a whole bunch of people on Kickstarter, Indiegogo. There's uh, Comics Go or something. There's another
yeah,
one.
yeah,
There's a few of them out there, but it's mostly Kickstarter and Indiegogo. And there's people going there just to look at different things, not necessarily comics. And they might see comics there on the browser page or whatever. So in a way, it acts as a newsstand proxy. It's maybe not quite as broad a market that it's hitting, but it is expanding beyond the comic stores. But I know that you have some uh, legitimate criticisms of the platform and how it's kind of muddying the waters in comics. So I think your main one is that there is no not safe for work category, which causes the general comics like category to get flooded with porn comics,
yeah,
which is not necessarily what everybody's looking for.
right.
And that might, delegitimize that space. So you want to talk a little bit about what you think Kickstarter should be doing to solve that?
Yeah, it's a simple solution in my estimation. Not safe for work comics take up about 15% of the launches on Kickstarter, but they consume about 40% of the actual funding. And to me, um, you've got them, not just to me, to a lot of people, they're sitting next to all ages comics. They're sitting next to biographical comics or historical comics. And people that are coming there to look for that sort of thing for their kids or for looking for adventure stories or superhero stories, they're seeing black barred orifices right next to capes or child adventurers or whatever the case may be, cutesy animal comics, things like that. And it's a turnoff to people. I don't have a problem with Kickstarter funding not safe for work comics for sure, but there's no rhyme or reason to how they're presented. And the simple solution, as you mentioned, is just to set up to change the categories. Right now, the way that comics are categorized is by the type of comic, and people don't shop that way. Nobody goes into a comic shop saying, I want a web comic, I want a graphic novel, I want a comic book. And some of those things are the same thing, really. We're just talking about a page count that differentiates them. And so my suggestion all along has been to set up genre categories because that's what people shop by. Some people like fantasy comics. Some people like not safe for work comics. Some people like sci-fi. A lot of people still like superheroes. And if you set it up that way, where people can select their own category when they set up their Kickstarter page, people can go in and look, and they're going to use those categories to shop, and they're not going to see the not safe for work stuff unless they are looking for the not safe for work stuff. Because right now, it's out of control. Um, there's no, I mean, honestly, the way that the search results are sorted depends on, I mean, there's one filter that determines it, and you can sort by magic, which just means random, or you can sort by launch date, either what's ending soon or what launched earliest. But you can't sort out any way to not see the not safe for work comics if you don't want to see them, or to see only those if that's what you want to see. I mean, it works in both directions. The Kickstarter lead was recently on Tyler James' Comics Watch podcast and suggested that they are looking at a filter. I don't know that a filter is really what's going to work here because if you're just filtering out the not safe for work comics, it still doesn't solve the genre categorization of the rest of it that will make it shoppable. And that's a problem for a lot of us. There's at any given time 200 to 300 plus projects on Kickstarter. That's a lot to sift through. But if you could break it down and select a category by genre, then you're going to be able to find things a lot easier because it's going to be a lot fewer to dig through because there's a lot of disparity in quality and type of comics within the genres as well. That's a whole different discussion. But yeah, just changing the categories to genre categories and including not safe for work as one of those is an easy solution. Long story short.
Do you think because the NSFW comics are make such a large part of the market share that there's a financial incentive for Kickstarter to not provide a solution for that and instead let them run rampant across the platform so that they're discoverable and more people pay for them?
Yeah, I think there has to be, they're running a business. I get it. I mean, there's got to be a financial incentive. But if you just change the categories, it doesn't prevent anybody from seeing them. I mean,
Mhm.
everybody that wants to see them knows how to click a button for the category that they're looking for.
Mhm.
But filtering them out is a more ham-fisted solution to me that's not as nuanced and isn't going to keep the platform in the money on those, I'm perfectly fine with, um, without also overshadowing the non not safe for work comics. That's a double negative. The non not safe for work comics in the process.
Mhm. Well, personally, I'm on board with with the solution, whatever the solution is. Yeah, I can see it being a reason why a lot of people would like not go to that platform to shop. It
Sure.
may be that, you know, on the short term, it's a boost in money, but if you're thinking long term, you want to be a serious platform, you're gonna have to sort through these things. Like, can you imagine you go on Amazon and it's all like it's all sorted the same way? It would just wouldn't make
Yeah.
sense.
Where you have sex toys next to bottled water and
Yeah,
romance novels and
yeah,
G.I. Joe figures. And yeah, you're right. That's a really good parallel.
yeah, yeah. So, you've been making comics and putting comics up there. So, tell me about your comics. You've got a bit of a niche genre that you're working in.
Yeah, we do weird horror and have since 2009, 2010. Our primary comic, our main story since that time has been a story called Vicious Circus, which is about killer clowns who go after child abusers instead of after children. Most killer clown stories, the clowns are eating kids, or Pennywise is bringing kids down into the sewer and sucking their life force out. But we wanted to take it a different direction and make horrible killer clowns, but that in their own twisted way defend or protect children. So that's been our primary driving comic for the last 10, 12 years, and we've had other things around that. Right now, I've got a comic on Kickstarter called Chainsaw Nose Job. That's a body horror centered around the last rhinoceros on Earth and efforts to kill it to take the last horn, to preserve it, to try to extend the line, or to magically duplicate it to create some sort of twisted chimera creature that's still a rhino to keep them alive for environmental purposes. It was a great book to work on with artist Oscar Pinto, who's done some work for heavy metal in the past.
Hmm.
And I've had a steampunk book going for about 10, 12 years called Last Ride of the Four Horsemen. It's coming to an end this year. I've got two more issues left on that. So yeah, we've put out a nice little catalog over the years, just the two of us working with some assorted art partners. It's been fun.
Hmm.
I love it. It's one of the reasons I'm sort of passionate about Kickstarter and making sure it's a nice environment for creators and backers and shoppers and collectors alike.
Hmm.
Because otherwise, I would never be able to do this without Kickstarter.
Hmm. Fair enough. Have you always been a fan of horror?
Oh yeah, especially the weirder horror creators like Clive Barker or Stephen King. I'm a child of the '80s, so encountered a lot of those movies, Hellraiser, things like that, and really shaped my taste for film. And then I got into reading Clive Barker's books, and that really twisted me into a horror fan. So even when we take on something like the steampunk story, it has horror elements to it. It's just in our nature. It's just in the type of storytelling we like to do. It's a way to make points about human behavior or human psyche or social commentary in an absurdist kind of way that's still terrifying without being a big downer all the time.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think also as a genre, horror is pretty stable. Um, Fans of horror will show up and give your thing a chance. That's my impression of that scene.
Yeah, and the date on Kickstarter bears that out. Since December, I've been sorting every launch every day in the Kickstarter comics category by genre. And horror is right up there with fantasy, even with not safe for work in terms of the number of launches, with superheroes and sci-fi. Those are your five big categories. And horror holds its own every month, and it's one of the top three earners on in Kickstarter comics every month. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Hmm. My impression of crowdfunding, now I've backed precisely two campaigns. In Canada, shipping to Canada is just brutal because most of these comics are out of America.
Yeah,
So those comics can get pretty expensive with the shipping.
yeah.
Um, but my impression of like doing a Kickstarter is that you have to have an audience to bring it there, but you seem to have uh, the inverse perspective where Kickstarter is a place you can build an audience. So tell me about that.
It's definitely both. Um, we were fortunate enough and kind of backed our way into this on the front end of our creative career. I mentioned the small recital competition. We came out of that with some fans, with some friends, and people that supported our work on Vicious Circus. So when we went to Kickstarter, all those people came with us. So we were talking about 30 to 40 people, not some massive audience, but because of their support, we were able to get on Kickstarter and fund those first few books for a few $100s a piece. And so we had those folks, and then we had folks come in that discovered us on Kickstarter. And there's a mix of those people that still support us today. And so it built over time. But in addition to the people that find you on Kickstarter, which is harder to do now because of the volume and the not safe for work stuff, as we talked about, in addition to those folks, we take email addresses at conventions. We have people who buy from our website and who allow us to use their email addresses on our email list. I've built quite a good little community here on Substack of people who support me, and we support them reciprocally. A lot of creators help each other out that way, and it helps get the word out. So it's a mix of both. You have to build outside of Kickstarter, but Kickstarter ideally um, is contributing to your audience as you move forward, and that's changed the last few years. I think it's a volume thing. I think it's a not safe for work thing. There's a mix of factors there, but it's just harder for people to find you among 300 campaigns than it was in 2010 when there were 50.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just realistic, and that's another reason I advocate for the subcategories to be changed in the comics category. It's because it'll just be easier for people to find what they're looking for, and I don't want to say competition, but your peers in either horror or superheroes or whichever genre you're working in. There's going to be fewer of them to sift through for people looking for those types of comics. So it's, because you still want to be able to build audience through Kickstarter, but people only have so much expendable income
Hmm.
to help. So
Yeah.
it's not the same as it was, but still vital. Still a
Yeah.
vital thing for indie creators. The indie comic scene would not exist in the form that it does today without Kickstarter. So it's absolutely necessary for new people to find you.
Yeah. Without the categories, it puts the onus on the creator to bring people
Yeah.
to where they are as opposed to making themselves discoverable by their genre thing. So that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to treat it like a department store, in my opinion,
Hmm.
and set it up so that people can find the men's clothing versus the women's clothing versus versus the optician's office versus, the food court or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, and it's not set up that way now at all.
Hmm.
Just common
Well,
sense, really.
yeah, here's hoping that that gets solved soon. Um, as the platform grows, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Um, oh, I had another question and it left. Oh, so Diamond Comics, you've been covering that a little bit. So it's official. It's completely over.
Yeah.
They've not been acquired. It's a total bust. I know that a lot of indie publishers were relying on Diamond. Do you foresee more of those entities moving into the crowdfunding space? What do you think there will be their solve?
Um, it- I think you'll see some of them move into crowdfunding. Honestly, I'm connected enough through friends that use Diamond to distribute to know that a lot of them have gone under because Diamond hasn't paid out uh, on any of those folks since December, I think.
Yikes.
And these are people, basically you're living paycheck to paycheck as a publisher working with Diamond because you get paid 3 months after you send your books there, which means that you've already paid to print, to ship, and every other expense that you've had to produce, including paying artists, paying writers, et cetera, et cetera. And then none of those people were reimbursed. And you're talking about small operations, not much bigger than us. We put out about 10 books a year, so some of those folks didn't put out that many. Um, and they're on the hook for all that money. And Diamond has already stated because of their bankruptcy, I think from December through, I can't remember if it's the end of March or the end of April, they're not going to pay those people because they're protected by the bankruptcy ruling. And I've seen social media posts by small publishers that are just like, well, we're done. We can't function this way anymore. I know people who just missed that bullet by not submitting things to Diamond to be distributed to the direct market just because of finances or late artwork or something like that. So I think some of those people will move back into crowdfunding. I haven't seen it yet, just in my daily reviews of launches. Um, it's hard to say, but it's a mess for sure. I don't think there's going to be another entity in the distribution space that's going to pick up indie comics like Diamond did. And they were very difficult to work with. I was a retailer for about 7 years between 2000 and 2007. Very difficult to work with. But still in all, they did give an avenue for indie creators to put their books in real comic stores if you're willing to take that risk. And now a lot of them that have are in dire straits because of it, because of the bankruptcy ruling. And the publishers that were still working with them and have the bigger ones have escaped to Penguin Random House, which distributes Marvel, or to Lunar, which distributes DC. And then I know some of the aspects of Diamond have been broken up and given or sold to other entities, and how that's going to work out, who knows? I know there was one called Alliance that's headquartered in Florida that's been hiring up Diamond execs, which tells you they're onto something. But are they going to service small time creators? I mean, is it really in their interest? Are they going to make enough money to care?
Hmm.
Probably not. I think it's probably over on that aspect. And there's been a lot of pop-up efforts from anywhere from the retailer website ICV2 to I've had 2 or 3 emails from people who are saying they want to take over the indie distribution. This is fly-by-night stuff. There's no follow-through from what I've seen so far. Kind of playing on the hopes and aspirations of indie creators who have stars in their eyes and think they're, they can create the next big superhero universe. And my advice would be to keep it small, keep it responsible on the financial side of things, and use crowdfunding. Work with individual stores that are willing to buy your product. Set up a good website with through Shopify, something like that, and work with Amazon, Comicsology, Global Comics, places like that to try to get your work out there without extending yourself to the point that you're going to be in financial ruin if some bigger entity decides not to pay you one day, which is what's happened.
Hmm. Hmm. Good advice. That was going to be my next question, advice. So you foresaw my question. Good job.
I've thought
Yeah.
about it a
So
lot. I mean,
yeah.
I never took the plunge with Diamond. I worked with a friend who has a small, very similar sized company to what we have to publish a few titles through Diamond 6, 7 years ago, and they were very sketchy, and I never trusted them. And I'm glad I didn't because I dodged this bullet. And I know other people that did the same, so I came out
Hmm.
lucky on it. But
Right
my
on.
advice would be keep it small, keep it responsible, make the books you want, but take your time and don't overextend
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. You can still
Good.
love doing this and you can still do it in a way that doesn't ruin the rest of your life financially if you
Yeah.
take your time and just be patient. Yeah.
Yeah. So show up every day and see what happens.
Treat it like a passion and not a pursuit.
Hmm.
That's I think that's a good way to look at it.
Hmm. Well, all your links and everything, send me everything you want,
Okay.
your live campaign and all that stuff. It'll all be linked. I'll put this up to Substack and YouTube, and good luck with
Okay.
that. Thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. It was nice talking to you. You got a
You
good
too,
head on
man.
your shoulders. Good advice from a veteran, somewhat of a veteran of the indie game. So,
Yeah.
uh, very enlightening to me.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. It's been fun. Nice talking with you too.
Okay.